I've been thinking about you. You're an unusual group of people. I love that you know that that's true. An eclectic group, a special breed. I don't think I'm exaggerating to say any of those things. You have traveled, in some cases, a long way to be here. Your own personal expense, to expand mind and soul. We'll get rid of that. They're doing it at the back. To re-enthrone freedom and flourishing. Like, who does that? You do. We do. And I want to celebrate that, right? We should celebrate that. We should celebrate right that at the beginning. And I want to do that in two ways. The first is I would like you to celebrate being here the way you think an Englishman. Is there something funny? How would an Englishman celebrate this moment? Just show me, go. How would they do it? Round of applause, let's go. I love that the way you did it was with silence. I saw like 20 people miming. It's like the Jubilee has got into your mindset. It's like, I think it might be something like this. You're not wrong. But now I would like you to contrast that. And I think you're going to need to get on your feet to do it. Because I would like you to show me how an American celebrates Craig and Sarah and the whole conference and all the people that put it on. Show me how an American does it. Let's see that. That's about how it goes. This silence. They're standing up, they're cheering, USA. That's the difference. That's what it is. And let me just say, this is what I think about you. I think many great things about you. And one of the great things I think is that life for you is fast and full of opportunity. The complication is that sometimes in this world, you start to think you have to do it all. And the impact of that is you're going to start to plateau in your progress, maybe even start to fail altogether. My position to you is that you can make a different choice. You can choose to eliminate non-essentials, and as a result of that, break through to a higher point of contribution. And I have a couple of things just to set the stage here. One is that I will invite you now to do something within the next 24 to 48 hours. I want you to teach something about what we talk about together to someone else in that period. Like, you don't even know what we're going to cover yet, but I still want you to take the role of a teacher right now. I think for this group, that's not such a crazy ask. Or maybe it's just as crazy ask as normal, but this group doesn't feel so crazy about it. Let's say it that way. Because you're already teachers. You already have the heart of a teacher. And I think if you have that mindset as we begin this conversation, you will learn faster, think deeper. The application will go on longer. That's what I want from you, to take the role of a teacher even at the beginning of this. Here's my commitment to you, is that by the end of this keynote, you will have, let's say, a sort of new superpower. That's a pretty bold promise, actually. I should have moderated that. And it's to shift, the superpower is to shift from being a slave to the trivial many, and instead become a master of the vital few. That's the superpower, because if you can do that in a world that is tilted who knows where, it's a tremendous advantage. In everything I share, I'm, of course, not telling you that you have to believe it or that you do believe it. I just want to share some of the things that I believe. It's for your consideration. And to do that, I was thinking about an experience I had more than 20 years ago, when I was staring at a piece of paper in my hands with all these scribbles, all these answers to a question. And the question was, what would you do if you could do anything? And I'd spent 20 minutes brainstorming that question. And as I'm looking at the piece of paper, I think, Well, I'm struck not by what I've written down, but I suddenly see what I have not written down. I have not written down, go to law school, which was inconvenient because I was at law school. I was at law school in England, and I was visiting friends in the United States, so I'm 5,000 miles from home. What do you do when you have such a eureka? I thought, well, I better call my parents. I call the 15-digit number back to England. My mother answers the phone, fortunately. She listens for a while. She says, I think you better talk to Dad. Now, here's the question, right, for you is, what would you say, actually for real, what would you say to your son after all that time, all that money, all that effort? He's calling you from halfway around the world, some harebrained idea. What would you say? What would you say if you were my father and I'm calling you? Just put your hand up, tell me what you'd say. Don't be shy. Yeah, go.
Say more.
Say more, she says. Say more. Good. What would you say?
Too bad, so sad, love Dad.
Too bad, so sad, love Dad. Go. Go for it. Go for it.
Think about it.
Think about it.
Are you insane?
Are you insane? There seems to be a sort of, I don't know, sort of two themes emerging here. More, what else would you say? What else would you say? Go. As long as you accept the trade-offs and the consequences, go for it. Go.
I wish I'd done that when I was your age.
I went. That's not what my dad said. My dad, I'll tell you what my dad said. He listened, which is not entirely like him. And then he became quite Churchillian about the whole thing. Son, you know what we've always told you. Parenthetically, what do you think that he thinks he's always told me? What do you think?
Never give up.
Never give up, yeah. That would be Churchillian, wouldn't it? What do you think? Be happy. No, he said go to law school. But in this moment, he seems to forget it. Son. And then because all Englishmen, as you know, quote Shakespeare over tea and crumpets for breakfast in the morning, he pulls a line, this literally is true, straight out of Hamlet. To thine own self be true, son. I've always told you that, always. Never. He had never said that to me in his whole life. Well, in this moment, that was a good moment, right? In that moment, he said, do what's essential. That's what he's saying. Don't worry about the consequences. Just do the right thing. Why am I starting with that story with you? Because on the piece of paper, through that exercise, a series of questions came to me. And these were the questions I wanted to pursue, wanted to get answers to. I want to put one of those questions to you in a moment. To set up the question, I want to ask you another easier question. And that is, by a show of hands, do we have any runners in the room? Any runners in the room? I love it the way people answer this question. They do it like this, they're like, which is sort of like, I've heard of the concept. I know people have done that from time to time. The rest of us are just awkward. Well, I suppose we're both supposed to be. It's not that hard. But you put your hand up confidently, didn't you, sir? What's your name?
John.
John. How much do you run, John?
I ran 4 miles this morning, so...
He ran 4 miles this morning. Give him a round of applause. So, John, if you and I were to have a race and you won the race, which you would, and let's say you won it decisively. I mean, it's not even a long race, it's not 4 miles, it's one run around the track, let's say, and you win by 50 yards. I mean, you're way ahead of me. And we race again, and you get to have the full 50-yard advantage you got from the first race. So you start 50 yards ahead of me. And you win again by another 50 yards. It's a simple question. How far ahead of me are you now? That's the question.
30.
The answer he gave was 30. And I bet there's an answer. It's 100. It's 100. There we go. That's a go. There we go. 10 points for Gryffindor. Well done. You got that. Now let's help John out with this next question then. If he starts a third race, the same distance ahead of me, right? So he starts the third race with 100 yards ahead of me. What is the approximate percentage chance John wins the race? That's my question. Approximate percentage chance. Let's hear it. That, I heard only one answer. I heard 100%. Yeah? It's a little rude. You know, because you didn't say 95%. You didn't say like, the high probability is. You said, there is no scenario on planet Earth that Englishman beats that American in that race. That's what you said. And all of you that said it, out. It's not rude, really, is it? They said, what would happen? That's what you're saying, and you're certain about it. Everyone who said 100, you weren't sort of clear. That's not what 100% means. You are sure. Now the question that I said I would put to you, here it is. Why is it that otherwise successful people, teams, companies, countries don't continue to be successful? You see, that's an important question, isn't it? You see, because you were 100% sure that it would. And the logic supports it. I'm not saying there's not a logical explanation for that answer. You won twice, you got all the advantage of the first full wins. Of course you have to win again, that's what's going to happen. And yet, as I've studied this question and all these years, I find that what should happen doesn't happen. That's interesting to me. Why is that? Now, I've given you a full, 20 seconds to think about it. I think that's fair. I've had 20 years, 20 seconds, let's go. What do you think the answer is? Hands up. What do you think the answer is? Why do otherwise successful people, teams, companies, countries not continue to be successful? Go. Answer at the back. They try to do too much. They get complacent. Go.
Stop doing what's essential.
They stop doing what's essential. I mean, these feel like people have read ahead or something. Go. They lose sight of what led to success in the first place. I like it. Go. That's complacency again. That's already the best. They're so the best. Is one of the great runners of British history. The 3-time Olympian was once in the world championship, and he was so far ahead at the end, he just tapered off almost literally to a walk, and then just got beaten at the end. Because he's so far ahead, he's sure he can't lose. Go. A thought here and then at the back. Go. The terrain changes. Maybe the race. Maybe I'm a cross-country runner. I'm not, but I could have been, Could have been. Go. Ooh, I didn't hear it. You're going to have to be louder. They're afraid of going out of their comfort zone. They only know one thing. They don't know the things they need to know. Go. They think success is beating the other. That's an interesting question. Too focused on the other. Go. Handicap. Why? How would they do that? How would they handicap themselves? They deliberately put obstacles in their own way. They're so tired of winning. Yes, that's an interesting phrase. Let me share an answer that came to me eventually, hidden in plain sight. In fact, you know what I'm going to do, though? I want to share the answer with you, but in an unusual way. I did this way especially for you. If you don't like the way the talk goes, therefore, it's your fault. It's the gist of it. David McCullough, you know David McCullough, don't you? The great historian. He once observed that you cannot understand history by looking backward, which is an odd kind of observation because, history is back there. But he says if you do that, you've got a problem. He says when we think about the past, from our vantage point, everything has a ring of inevitability to it. That makes sense. I like that idea. We forget the suffocating uncertainty that they faced. And in one fell swoop, it's like we make the people of the past caricatures. Like somehow playing out in a Disney movie. Of course, everything's going to work out the way it worked out. You see what I'm saying? If you see it from now looking backwards, nobody lived in the past. People in the past didn't live in the past. They lived in the present, which is not this present. You get the idea. And let me just put this aside again, because I don't think I've made this clear, lest it be overlooked. I am British. If you'd done it right, we wouldn't have heard you. That's the truth, isn't it? But it's true. It's true. And you know, I've been thinking more about this recently because, of course, we're just a few days away from a special day. July 4th is just coming up. And I always have to prepare myself for that. You know, because inevitably someone will point out to me that I'm English, you know, like that comes with the territory. And when they do, there's at least two comments that remind me of the mistake that McCullough's talking about here. The first is typical for someone to say, it's July 4th. I bet everyone is still bitter in England. They really say that to me. But the thing is, it's a matter of history that July 4th isn't now, never was, a marked day there, because in 1776, Great Britain was an empire. Not that I'm bitter about having lost it, you know. It's the greatest, largest anyway, ever known. It was a success, yes, a success. I mean, to lose a colony was careless, but not hugely significant. So that's a misreading of history to think, oh, you see, I bet they hate that. No, nobody cared. Nobody really noticed. This is not how it was happening at that time. That's the first mistake people make. And the second thing that people always say to me is, the Americans beat you English. You know, happy July 4th to you too, I say. But again, this is a historical fact here, you see. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, they thought of themselves, this is true. Have you read your history books, do you know this? As Englishmen. That's true. George Washington used to dress in the absolute fashion of London. He was an Englishman, and he was about the best example you could find of it. And so, if you'll just follow this with me, if they all thought of themselves as Englishmen, and that means that the Revolutionary War, at least at first, was not a war between Americans and Englishmen. It was between Englishmen and Englishmen. It was a civil war. And that is true. That is a fact, which leads to its irreconcilable conclusion that whichever way you cut this, the English won. So, joking aside, I have the advantage of some of you because many of you are American by birth. I'm curious about that. Who is American by birth here? Show of hands, yeah. Okay. Not everybody, but many of you. And you're here because someone else, chances are an Englishman, came here, made this their home. You came here they came here to, this is important for us, isn't it? To live free. To flourish free. I mean, if we're being honest to the history of it, to worship free. And whether or not they had literally heard, they had heard those words from the 19th century poet Emma Lazarus, her poem, The New Colossus. We know it, of course, well, because you find it on the Statue of Liberty. Let me just read it to you again. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to break free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. So I'm British by birth, but I'm American by choice. I chose to quit law school, to come to England, from England, to teach, to think about why people behave the way they do. That's what I've spent all these years doing. An anthropologist by, if not by formal training in nature. And these years of thinking have led me to observe something surprising. This now comes back to the answer to the question I've put to you. the answer to why successful people, teams, companies, countries don't continue to be successful is success. That's it. What I've learned is that success can undermine the very causes of success. Yes, that's so important. I mean, I first observed it working with Silicon Valley companies. This is the pattern. They're focused on just a few things, just to get clarity. And that clarity leads to success. And that success breeds options and opportunities. And those opportunities, I mean, all of that sounds like the right problem to have, but it does in fact turn out to be a problem if it leads to what Jim Collins has called the undisciplined pursuit of more. What does that mean? Could you put in your own terms what the undisciplined pursuit of more is? Give me it in one word, show of hands. One word. What does the undisciplined pursuit of more mean? Let's hear it. Go. What? Fun. It could be fun. Go. Distractions. Egoism. Is that what you said? Egotism. It's my fault. It's just saying completely different things to what you're saying. Hedonism is what you said. Hedonism. I like it. Go. Chaos. The back. You forgot your answer. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Overwhelm. You are overwhelmed about trying to remember the answer. Overwhelm. And we understand that. Greed. Gluttony. Boredom. Busy. Yeah, when I first came to America, when I asked people how they were, no, seriously, this is true. When I asked people when I first came here, it's a little more than 20 years now, here's what they'd say. I say, how are you? They'd say, great, great. And no one in England says that. And they said, great. And I was like, it was like they were saying, I'm American. What else would I be? I actually really just thought it's a beautiful thing. Great. And now if you ask people, what do they say? They say, they don't say that now. How are you now? What do they say? Do you know? Busy. I mean, they won't just necessarily say busy. They might say, oh, busy. I mean, good, great. I mean, there's so many things, but busy. There's whole flavors of it. I mean, I'm busy. I mean, I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed, but busy. I mean, there's like whole mixtures of it. But in the key ingredient is busy. Yes, that's what the undisciplined pursuit of more looks like. That's what the idea of it is. And if you apply that at a national level, let me tell you what I think it means. It means that as a country, even at that level, America could be living on borrowed momentum. And we could draw the wrong conclusion about the current success. That's possible. We could say, oh, it's because of us, it's because of this generation. We are the reason. And of course, what it also means is that, I mean, America, even with this economic uncertainty that I suppose is with us and will always perhaps be with us, it's still the largest economy in the world, still the strongest military. There's all sorts of reasons. I mean, isn't this cause to say it's success? Isn't this a success story? Isn't America a success story? That was not the British way of doing it, but you like it, but you agree. So it's a success story. But to what do we owe our current fortunes? Could we be reaping almost entirely where other people sowed? What do you think about that? And if so, what did they sow? I see, because you can't trust success to be your teacher. Bill Gates said it that way. He said, success is a very poor teacher. I mean, that you can think about that for a long time. If success isn't your teacher, what's your teacher? You've got to start figuring out the things that led to success. You've got to, it's like the goose and the golden egg, Aesop's fable, right? You can't just, it's the golden eggs, we want the golden eggs, and you don't understand the causes of it. And then, of course, in the fable, they cut off the head of the goose, and he looks for the golden eggs inside, and of course it's terrible because there's none in there, because he didn't understand the means of production. He didn't understand what was causing the success, and this This is a true problem for us in any level of success that we have. So I want to share with you a few seeds, philosophical seeds that they sowed that enabled freedom and flourishing. Does that sound okay? Does that sound all right? Are we okay with that? Things that we can use too, to be able to reset, reinvest, reimagine our own journeys towards higher contribution. Right? That's the idea. We're not just talking about it for the sake of philosophy. We're not saying it just so that that's intellectually interesting. We're trying to do it so that we can build a life that really matters. So the first thing I would say, I don't know that this has to be in order, but these are close to priority order. They claimed the privilege to walk according to the dictates of their own conscience. Yeah, this is non-trivial. Let's go a little deeper. Does anybody here know about? I hope somebody does, but we'll see. Socrates' daemon. Anybody know about Socrates' daemon? Okay, Socrates' daemon. Daemon. It's interesting. He thought that he was considered at the time, at least by some in power, the wisest man in the world. And he said, he never claimed that. He never believed that, or at least acknowledged that publicly. But he did say this. He said, if I am, it's because I have a demon with me. That's a pretty strange answer. He said this about the demon. He said, this demon is always with me. He never tells me what to do. But he does tell me what not to do. Oh, I think that is profound. Because the antidote to the undisciplined pursuit of more is the disciplined pursuit of less. Less but better. And so you have to get great. In a time of success, you have to get great at figuring out what to say no to. If you don't, you will be consumed, utterly consumed with the nonsense of the massive, profound change that success brings to you. Before 1865, I'll tell you what life was. It was just hard. Nobody had any options at all. There's this we have this romanticized view of life before the agrarian age. Was simpler. Oh, it was simpler. There was nothing. To survive was everything. Before 1865, to survive was very, very, very hard. The state of our scenario, like the optionality we have, bears no resemblance whatsoever, not even in kind. It is different in kind to what life was then. The change in the human condition cannot be overstated in comparison to then. Drucker said, when the history of our times is written from a long-term perspective, say, let's 300 or 400 years from now, he said it won't be like e-commerce that gets people's attention. He said it will be a change in the human condition. He said for the first time in human history, people had choices, an exponential increase in choices. That we've lived in it. Every person here has lived in it. For so long, we just don't know what it was before. But you see, what that does is it creates a kind of blindness. And so the choices have increased exponentially, right? Massively. Has our ability to discern which things to do grown at the same speed and capacity? If you think the answer is yes, that's an astounding conclusion. Where did it come from? What's happening inside of your life that's an exponential improvement in the way you make decisions. That's what you'd be claiming. An exponential, continually exponential improvement in your lifetime. I don't see it. I see it nowhere at all. The challenge has totally changed. You can call it the right problem. It's still a problem. to have so much opportunity, so many ideas, so many things you could read about, so many things you could learn about. You can learn about everything and for free. Everything. There is almost nothing available to the human mind. And it's so overwhelming. What we do instead is we just spend time in social media. Am I exaggerating? I mean, we can do anything. And instead we're just like, oh, this is way too much. I got to binge watch something on Netflix now. You know. We get pulled into the non-essential as a coping mechanism to numb the challenge that is so massive and all around. Well, I saw this all happening in the Silicon Valley, but then I had an experience myself that really made it precise. That this wasn't a business phenomenon, it's a human phenomenon. Now, this brings it just to something tangible, I suppose, but I got an email from my boss at the time. It said Friday between 1 and 2 p.m. would be a very bad time for your wife to have a baby. I need you to be at this client meeting. Yeah, I'm sure they were joking, really, but it stressed me out still, and Friday comes along, and we're in the hospital, and our daughter's just been born, and I'm trying to work out what to do, and I've got my laptop open, and I've got my phone on, and I'm trying to do it all on the basis, on some logical error, that if you can do it all, you can have it all. And so what do I do with that logic? I go to the meeting. Yeah, to my shame, I go to it. Afterwards, even, my manager said, the client will respect you for the choice you just made. The look on their faces did not, I will tell you, evince that sort of respect. But even if they had, isn't it clear to you, obvious, that I made a fool's bargain? I violated something essential for something non-essential. What I learned was this. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. Yeah? That's what I learned. But what about you? Let's take like a snap poll. Actually, a literal snap poll, right? I'm going to ask you some questions. If they're true for you, snap. Let's see the room. Let's get a sense. Have you ever found yourself like I was, feeling stretched too thin at work or at home? Snap for that. Have you... Oh, there we go. Multiple snaps for the same. Have you ever found yourself like I was, busy but not productive? Snap for that. Have you ever found yourself like I was, where your day is being hijacked by other people's agenda for you? Snap for that. Yeah, there you go. That's the undisciplined pursuit of more. That's the culture we're swimming in. I've asked those questions just all over the world now. And all over the world, everybody snaps to every question. This is a cultural phenomenon. It's not an individual thing only. So if you are above average in your selectivity in decision making, if you're above average in what you say no to and how you say no to it, you're still likely to be a non-essentialist. That's the challenge, because the normal distribution curve is so skewed to the non-essential. There's so much stuff. How do you get out of this? What can you do about it? And this comes back, I think, to Socrates' daemon. Because the idea is that if you get cluttered in the undisciplined pursuit of more, if you stop listening to a daemon, if you haven't even found your daemon, then you'll look like the image on the left. Millimeter progress in a million different directions. Consumed by the success, even if you don't feel successful, that's not the point. You live at a time. Warren Buffett said this recently. Listen to this. He said, this is unbelievable what he said. He said, if you're alive today in the developed world, you have more opportunity in terms of education, life expectancy, travel opportunity than Rockefeller. You get that? That's the difference 100 years makes. If you're going at the kind of transformation we've been talking about, the 1865 onwards, unbelievable, unparalleled change. In 1865, I don't know why I keep coming back to that. In 1865, in America, in today's, including the inflation rate of today, people were making less than $1 a day. That was the average income. That's half the current UN standard for extreme poverty. That's where we were in 1865. You can go and look up the trajectory since then. The problems we have today are problems of abundance. Doesn't make them less of a problem, but that's the type of problem we're facing. And so what you have instead, the daemon helps you to cut off, to prune, to eliminate the non-essentials so that you can actually do what you came here to do. To detect. That's what it's about. It's detecting. That's what we mean when I say conscience. It's discerning. It's to be able to discern between the vital few and the trivial many. To be able to pick those things that matter. Do you remember Storm Ida? You remember Storm Ida a while ago? This is a few months ago. You probably don't remember. I mean, it was like just a news story. If you weren't in it, it's just like, okay, another massive crazy storm somewhere. Okay, well, good luck. I was in it. I remember. It was in Boston. Not Boston. I was in New York, I think. And I got to the airport. Once I got to the airport, there was no leaving it. The storm comes in while everyone's there. And it went on for hours. No flights are going out. You couldn't get a car out. You couldn't. When I went to walk out, I couldn't walk at first. I take the train. I'm like really determined because I can see a hotel from the airport. And I'm like, look, I just need to get to sleep over there, get away from this crazy. All I have to do, it takes 10 minutes to get there. It's no big deal. So I take the train to the closest location. And I talk to somebody. I tried to rent a car. They're like, no renting cars right now. Storm Ida, I look outside. It's like, it doesn't look so bad. He says, I can see the rain. I've done rain, English. I'm okay with that. And they said, well, look, actually, it isn't that hard. You go down this one street, it's 10 minutes, straight down there, you'll hit right into it. And I go to walk out, and I walk into the rain a little bit, like 10 paces, and I hear it inside. I hear it as clear as could be. Do not do this. Yeah. I keep on walking. Just about another 5 or 6 paces, and I hear it even clearer. Do not do this. And I'm like, okay, I'll retrace all my steps and go back up. And I did that. And I share that story because that's the daemon, right? And you got to hear it. So I'm saying we hear a lot about like follow your passion and do all these things. And I'm not saying that's entirely wrong. But I'll say this. What you want is an essentialist. Is when you hear that daemon say, do not do this, do not do this. That's it. And out of that, even though that could sound from the wrong perspective like an almost repressive rule, that is freedom. You think there can't be a prison born of too much? I mean, there's a prison of having too little. I'm not saying that's not true. But there's a prison for having too much too. Having no restraint. You think no restraint isn't a prison? No discipline. What you eat or what you say or what you say yes to. What we want is a disciplined pursuit of less. So here's what you can ask yourself. What is my conscience telling me not to do today? That's it. It's telling you not to do today. And then don't do it. Somebody who kind of read Essentialism and so on, they started living by that idea. And at first, it helped them to be a little less stressed out in their lives. They had a business owner, an entrepreneur, happened to be in England. She's getting more selective in what she says yes to and what she says no to, and it's helping her out. And then one day, she gets a call from her father, says, look, your mother is in the hospital again. It's no big deal, just letting you know. Just keeping you in the loop. And she said, I remember, she said, Greg, I remember where I was, what the weather was like outside. I remember, time seemed to stand still because I knew that I had to say no to everything but that today. Say no to all of it, all those pressing engagements from the clients, all the opportunities, all the email. Don't live out of your inbox today. That's what she felt. Go get to the hospital now. And she said no to everything else. She made a decision. The decision comes from the Latin to cut or to kill. That's to cut or to kill. That's what it means. It makes sense. The root word of scissors and fratricide and homicide. And I mean, it's to cut or to kill. You haven't made a decision until you've said no to something. It's not even a decision. Saying yes is not the thing. It's saying no. Strategy is what you say no to. So she says no to it. All that frees her up to be able to do the one clear yes. She gets to the hospital. She sees her mother. They say, Mom, it's so great to see you. I love you. Mother says, I love you back. Just talking for a few minutes. Within 1 hour, her mother had fallen into a coma. No one expected that. She never recovered. A week later, she turned off the life support machine. And that's when she wrote to me to say, if I hadn't been an essentialist, that day, I'd have made a different decision. I'd have cut off the essential thing without even knowing it. And that's why this is, I think, the important seed, the first philosophical seed in order that we need to sow in our own lives if we want to enable freedom and flourishing. Let me talk about the second thing. They created the space for freedom of expression necessary to understand each other. I could weep about this. Let me ask it in a less dramatic way. We'll do another snap poll. Have you ever found that the busier you get, the less you invest in your relationships? Snap for that. Have you ever found, one more snap question, have you ever noticed that the less you invest in your relationships, the harder they get? Snap for that. Yeah. You can snap for this one too. Maybe I wasn't going to do it, but I think we'll do it. Do you have a relationship right now that has social friction in it? Snap for that. I won't have you snap for this, but question for you. Do you have any that feel strained? Yeah, okay, you snapped anyway. Estranged, frozen. The reason I could weep for this, I mean, if the founding fathers' communication habits at that time had been the same as our current communication norms, like the country could not exist. Not wouldn't, could not. Because you cannot fuel a new creation, a third alternative that had never been done before, without understanding people and understanding differences, and in a deep way, and over issues you fiercely disagree with. Our inability to really talk with each other still, to understand each other when people think things different to us, this is what makes me want to weep. I think it is a priority. Democracy is debate, is discussion, is listening, is understanding. That's what it is. Yeah, you have all sorts of systems that they put in place, that the founders put in place to make it possible for us to do it in a politic state. That's why those systems are in place, that's why all the checks and balances, it's so that there could be debate. You had to have debate. That was the whole idea. But I don't know if they foresaw. Don't know. I won't say they didn't, because they seem to foresee a great deal. But I don't know if they foresaw a society so consumed with noise, so overwhelmed with distraction, so vulnerable to the latest, social media mechanism that tends to so violently polarize conversation. I don't know that they could have imagined it. And so you can have all the institutions, but if you don't have a culture of understanding and a culture of listening, I don't know. I don't know how we get through it. I don't know how we survive it. And that's at the very big level. But, I just was at an event in Arizona at a hotel, well, next to a hotel. It's called the Talking Stick Hotel. It's a pretty weird name, actually, I mean, if you think about it. But do you know what a talking stick is? Do you know about this? Who knows about the talking stick? Give me a hand up, you know. You know about this, right? This is Native American mechanism for communication. You know, the idea, it's a very simple idea. You only get to speak if you're holding the stick. That's it, right? I mean, how far is that from Twitter? Honestly, how far is that from where, have you not seen it yourself? It doesn't matter what the political position is. I'm not talking about that at all. It's way, way more important than whatever political position of the day is. It's a meta conversation compared to that. But have you ever seen on like whatever conversation, talking heads where you have 3 or 4 or 5 people talking at the same time, arguing at the same time? Have you seen that? I don't mean it happens every day, but I have literally witnessed that. Everyone is yelling at the same time. How far from the talking stick can you get? The way you get the talking stick, incidentally, is that you need to express what the other person is saying to their satisfaction, and then you get it. Does that make sense? Okay, we've done it with our own children. Actually, we've done it for years, sometimes with enormous failures. But, you know, each child, I have my son with me today, so he's testament to this. You know, it doesn't have to be a talking stick, but it's like, you know, it could be a pen, it could be a fork if it's at the table, you know, whatever. It's just something. Fork's dangerous, but, you know, and they have to restate to the other person's satisfaction what they are saying. And that doesn't sound hard intellectually. Maybe it does, but I'll tell you, once it's an emotional story, once they say something you feel passionate about, deeply about, a little offended about, oh man, that's the test. Because you just desperately want to say what you want to say. They're wrong, you're right, and you're emotional about it. But the ability to communicate, I mean, relationships are the most essential thing in life, and the most essential thing in relationships is people being able to understand each other. To be understood is the greatest need. I think it's the deepest human need. And they seem to direct this. Stephen Covey, who's a mentor of mine before he died, he said he believed, I don't know what his evidence was for it, but he believed that the Native Americans had taught the founding fathers how to use the talking stick. He believed that. And that was part of what made it possible to have the great debates, to be in that, you know, to be in Philadelphia, to be able to rage with the intent to actually understand each other and solve the problems. Still rage, still full of passion, still fighting to build something they believed in, to build something they hoped would outlive them by 100 years, by 200 years. Of course, they want for 1,000 years. Well, that's part of it, and it's not just that it's not just that I worry about political leaders not being able to do this. Of course I worry about that. I see it every day, but I worry even more about the culture of contempt between us, because if we lose the ability to understand each other, all meaning is lost. Then, what you have left after that is confounded. You're confounded. You're confused. You will make a millimeter progress in a million different directions if you're lucky. In order to get clarity and buy-in, you must have the process of disagreement. You must have a way of embracing the social frictions of our lives. And the key to doing it is to shelve your own agenda first, to listen to the other person, to state to their satisfaction what they're saying. And you can start that today in the next conversation you have. And if you do it right, you might struggle with it first, but if you do it right, it's like layers of onions coming off, layer after layer, right? Down into the deep and essential. On the surface, you have, in our surface conversations, they're important actually, but they're at a certain degree, they're sort of fairly non-essential and fairly safe. In England, this is literally true. Everyone talks about the weather. That's true. Oh, the weather today is terrible, isn't it? Oh, yes. That's a great bit of weather we're having today. There's great weather. Everyone, start that way. You never start that way in California. You never start that way in America. I never had anyone start that way in 20 years of being here. Everyone in England. You start at the surface, it's safe, but it's also trivial. And then you move on to the next layer down, and now it's essential, it's getting important, it's a little less safe. And then somewhere down at the core is something essential, and it's vulnerable, and it matters. And once you understand that, you have something far more valuable than you had before. You unleash the other person. You unleash your own ability to be able to work together with them. Now you understand what their purpose is beyond their position. And so they are suddenly open to you, to what you want to say. And so you'll be able to collaborate together and actually coming up with a clear path forward of what you believe together is possible. I'm going to give you two options for how we end this conversation today. I can tell you a story. They're both stories. How do I do this? One is about, you're going to vote on this. One is about America's king, and one is about salt. They're both good stories. I want you to know which one you want. Snap for America's king. Snap for that. Snap for salt. That is amazing. I started with a story about how I almost became a barrister in England. This story is about someone who did become a barrister in England and almost stayed a barrister in England, but had a family emergency come up. A whole series of things arrived, and so they ended up going across to South Africa, to where their family is. And when they were in South Africa, they have this, they're in the train, they're in first class, they've bought tickets. I'm not joking now. I'm an Englishman. He said that. And I deserve to be in first class. I bought the tickets. And they say, you cannot be in here. And he says, well, I'm staying. And they left and they brought back other people. And you have to go. And well, I'm not going. And they threw him out. They physically took him off that train and they threw him out. And he stayed at a freezing train station all night long. And he just thought about it. Do I ignore it and go on with my life? Or is this one of those essential, piercing moments that defines me? Do I need to say no to all of the non-essential things because this is my contribution? This is what I need to give. Well, he concludes that he has detected, that the meaning behind the experience is that he has detected part of the core mission of his life. So he fights in South Africa. He fights the law that allowed them to do that. He went and lived in the Phoenix settlement, which is in the very, very south of South Africa. He stayed there for 23 years, fighting that law. And he was successful. Successful enough that by the time he went back to the home of his birth, to India, people were waiting for him. They were in the train station. Crowds of people. They wanted him to run for office. Come and run for office and let's get rid of the British. And he said no. He never used the term, he never used the demon. He never said that, but his whole life is just defined by inspired, discerning no's. He said no. Why? He said, because I don't know, he said, I don't know how it is that so few British can control so many Indians so effortlessly. So if I'm Prime Minister, it doesn't make any difference. I won't be able to help him any more then than now. I just have power but no clarity. So what does he do? He travels across India for a year. What's he doing? Think about the first two things we talked about to do. What's he doing? Listening, trying to understand the people. He's in the paddy fields with them. He's with the poor. He's asking questions. He's trying to construct an understanding of this complex machine. He's trying to identify amidst all that trivial many, the vital few, the essential thing. So instead of being a slave like all the other politicians at that time were, just berating the British, ignoring the issue, they didn't know what the issue was either. So they're a slave to the trivial many. He became a master of the vital few. Do you know what he found? It was infinitesimally small. It was infinitely important. You already know the answer. What did he find? The answer was salt. The British controlled the production of salt. And because they did that, the controlled the production of bread and the entire food chain. And so that's where the idea came to him to walk across India in a demonstration of civil disobedience and make salt at the beach. It became known as the Salt March. Went to the beach, he picked up salt. The police officer had gone before him and tried to stamp the salt into the sand so he couldn't even do it. But he found a piece and he picked it up. And in that moment, he had violated the law. And they arrested him and they threw him in prison. And they threw 30,000 more people in prison for doing the same thing all across India. A peaceful demonstration, a way to show, to assert how oppressive the regime was. It was through that, and of course other experiences like it, that coalesced to create this unbelievable journey. You know, we talk about it like the passive resistance. He never liked that word passive. He never thought there was anything passive about what he was doing. It just wasn't violent. There's a big difference. Do we think for 1 second that Gandhi would have achieved what he did, which was to bring the largest democracy in the world into existence? Do we believe for a second that the independence of the Indian people would have happened if he'd just done everything? You know, tried to do it all for everyone all the time. When he died, he had only 10 items to his name. Right there in Phoenix settlement where he lived. I went there when I was in South Africa. I was given, when I went to the home, a poem. I was told it was the only poem, because we're talking about Gandhi, that Gandhi ever wrote. And in the poem, I found 4 words. These are 4 words that get to the heart of what essentialism is, a heart of the philosophical seed that we need to sow. Here's the phrase: reducing oneself to zero. There's a lot in that phrase. But the idea is to strip away more and more of who you really are. Let me show a visual of it. This is the wrong way of thinking about everything we're talking about today. You maintain a non-essentialist mindset and then an essentialist, you know, a little bit of essentialism on the outside. What he was an essentialist at his core. He became an essentialist. And if you do that over time, what happens is that you push out all the non-essentials. You get to be able to pursue those things that really you came here to do, to discern the path that is unique to you. When Gandhi died, the US Secretary of State at the time, General Marshall, said of Gandhi, here is a man who has shown that simplicity is more powerful than empires. He has become the spokesman for the conscience of mankind. Einstein said of Gandhi, generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth. Well, the point isn't that we have to be Gandhi. The point is that if we will plant the right seeds, I could say the seeds of essentialism, this conscience, this willingness to eliminate anything but the non-essential, to create the space to be able to invest in relationships so that we can actually understand each other again, that we can develop and protect and re-enthrone that extraordinarily precious, unimaginably rare ability, that freedom of expression, then we have every reason to believe that we can break through to our own highest contribution. When I look at you today, I think there's something special about you. You could be doing anything, and you're here. You could be consumed, living out of your inbox, but you're here. To me, there's something so inspiring about you. What you are, who you are, it matters. Who you are is essential. That, at least, is what I've been thinking about as I've been thinking about you.
I hope you enjoyed that, and I invite you to join us for Level Up 2023 in Phoenix, Arizona, June 21 through 24. Speakers include Barry Weiss, Timothy Sandifer, Eric Daniels, and many more voices of reason. For information and to register, visit levelupconferences.org or click the link below. See you in Phoenix.